Hello, I'm going to go through the beginnings of photosynthesis. So this is just an intro today, and then we're going to be exploring it deeper in the next couple of days. Okay, so the organelle that performs photosynthesis are chloroplasts. As you all know, when we did the cells as a factory in the last unit, we saw that they act like the solar power plant. It's not quite that way, but the chloroplasts convert solar energy into chemical energy for the cells of plants to live. The majority of photosynthesis in a plant obviously it occurs in all the green parts. That's where the chloroplasts are located. But most of it occurs in the leaf. This here is a cross-section of a leaf. You can see the different layers. The top layer is the cuticles, like the waxy surface when you look at a leaf. The epidermis, just like our epidermis or our skin, it helps to protect us in the plant. The epidermal cells help to protect the plant as well. And then the hypodermis is just below the epidermis. Those are just prefixes for the different layers of the dermal layer. And then we have the palisade layer and the spongy mesophyll. This is where the majority of photosynthesis happens. Okay, so the palisade, or the cells, are packed closer together, and then the spongy mesophyll has these gaps for the gases that are used and created by photosynthesis to accumulate. So carbon dioxide is used and oxygen is produced, and it's kind of stored in these areas right here. Gases enter and exit the leaf through openings called stomata, which I'm going to come back to a little bit later. Okay, so the mesophyll layer and the palisade layer are where most photosynthesis occurs in cells of plants. Okay, so here's a stomata. So this is that part I was just showing at the bottom of the leaf. I can't go back. If I can move this thing around. These are called guard cells, and the guard cells help to control the openings. So plants obviously need water in order to live, but they also, in the heat of the day, could lose a lot of water. Okay, so the guard cells help to control that water loss, but the guard cells also have to control and be open so that carbon dioxide can enter the plant for the reactions of photosynthesis, because the overall equation for photosynthesis is the exact opposite of what it was for cellular respiration. So in photosynthesis we have 6 CO2 plus 6 waters, and that gives us our glucose, and our oxygen. Okay, so this has to be, the plant has to be able to get that CO2 in, but it wants to prevent water loss. Now, for this reaction to occur, the energy that drives the combination of the carbon dioxide in the water is obviously light. Okay, and so at nighttime, the stomata will close to help prevent that water loss, also in the heat of the day. And we're going to get into some adaptations that plants have to prevent water loss later on. All right, so the first part, how do these guard cells know when to open? Well, it's activated by blue light. Okay, and so the way that light kind of works in the morning, if you've ever, I don't know, as long as you're not near a street light from your bedroom window, but if you ever notice that the light in the early morning has a bluish tinge, it's just based on the way that the light is entering the atmosphere from the sun at that time. It's just the angle of the sunlight. It's more blue light. And then as the day progresses and we get to the late afternoon, early evening, you can see the light levels become more kind of orangey or red. Okay, so blue light helps to activate the movement of potassium ions into the guard cells. Okay, so that's an active transport of potassium ions into the guard cells. Because that ion accumulation in those guard cells happens, the osmotic balance is all thrown off. And so to hit equilibrium, water then has to come in. Okay, that causes them to swell, and then they will open. Okay, so that's basically how it causes it to open the stomata in the morning. And so it's activated by that blue light so that photosynthesis can start as soon as daylight is present. And as I said before, we need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. So opening those stomata as early as possible when the light levels are just starting to show up means that there's more time in the day that a plant can go through photosynthesis. So the purpose of photosynthesis, just to sort of go back to it because I didn't really fully explain it, is to make a type of storage energy, glucose for cells. Okay. I have a video that's going to explain that. Play this video.
The opening and closing of a stoma occurs by means of a potassium pump. This mechanism is also controlled internally by a plant hormone, abscisic acid or ABA. An external factor, light, causes potassium ions to move into the guard cells from the surrounding epidermal cells. Potassium ions move by active transport through specific channels in the cell surface membrane of the guard cells. This transport requires the presence of adenosine triphosphate or ATP. The increase in the concentration of potassium ions in the guard cells causes the transformation of starch into malate in the cytoplasm and a decrease in the water potential in the cells. As a result, water enters the guard cells from the surrounding epidermal cells by osmosis. This brings about a change in the shape of the guard cells and the stoma opens. In the late afternoon, when the potassium ions leave the guard cells, the malate in the cytoplasm changes back into starch, and the water potential in the guard cells increases. Water leaves the guard cells, their turgidity decreases, and the stoma closes. The opening and closing of a stoma occurs.
Okay, so that's the guard cells. Now to go in and talk a little bit more about the organelles involved, the chloroplast. This here is a chloroplast, just like the mitochondria that we talked about in the cellular respiration portion of this unit. It has two membranes, an outer membrane and an inner membrane. Again, the chloroplast, according to endosymbiotic theory, was thought to have originated when a photosynthesizing cell, bacterial cell, was ingested by another one via endocytosis. So the outer membrane would have been the host cell's membrane, that vesicle that formed around it. And instead of killing it and digesting it, it formed a symbiotic relationship. The chloroplast, so the new cell that was engulfed performed a role of producing energy for the host cell, and the host cell provided protection for that early bacteria. Then over time it evolved as just an organelle that's present in eukaryotic cells, eukaryotic plant cells. Okay, so there's two membranes. Then we have these little stacks of discs. Each one individual disc is called a thylakoid, and then the stack itself is called a granum, and plural is grana. Okay, so granum is this whole stack. Each little disc is called a thylakoid. So important reactions happen across the thylakoid membranes. Okay, and the inside of the thylakoid, the opening, is called lumen. So lumen is any kind of opening. So like when you think about your intestines, the inside of your intestine is called the intestinal lumen. So whenever you see that word, it just means the inside or the opening. Surrounding all of these stacks is what's called the stroma. The stroma is kind of analogous to the matrix in mitochondria or cytoplasm. Sorry, I'm writing with my finger, so it doesn't look the best. Okay? And that's the basic. So the stroma, some of the reactions of photosynthesis are going to happen in the stroma, and some are going to happen across the thylakoid membrane. Okay, and then this is another video just going to show you, move in and show you an animated version of the inside of the leaf. So we're going into to a stoma. Stomata is plural, stoma is that. So that's that opening with the guard cells right here. And those are all the cells. And we're in the spongy mesophyll layer, and these are all just individual cells. And then we're going to go inside of a cell to see the chloroplast. Okay, now it's entering into a plant cell. And the green things are the chloroplasts, and then you see all the other organelles. That purple thing on the right is a mitochondrion flying through the cytoplasm. And now it's going to get in closer to this chloroplast. And across both membranes. And now we're in the stroma, and those discs there are the thylakoids. The stack of them again is called granum. And you can see on the top, those are called photosystems on top of the thylakoid. There's an electron transport chain that's happening with plant cells. And that's what those are doing. Those are called photosystems, in which they're absorbing light energy from the sun and causing an electron transport chain to happen, which we're going to get into more tomorrow. I think that's about it. This shows anything else other than these things wiggling around. Yeah. Okay. Here's a overview of photosynthesis. So there's two types. So we can kind of think of photosynthesis as the opposite of what happened in cellular respiration. So in cellular respiration, we had glucose being broken down into carbon dioxide, and then as that glucose was being broken down, electrons are being removed and to move through an electron transport chain. Here, we start with an electron transport chain. Okay, the electron transport chain happens across the thylakoid membrane. These are called the light reactions. Light energy frees electrons from water. So remember, in cellular respiration, water was the ultimate destination of electrons. Here, it's the source of electrons. And the waste product is the oxygen that's left over. The plant gives that off. The electrons move through the electron transport chain, generating a proton gradient, and then the electrons end up in an electron carrier called NADPH. Okay, so remember we had NAD and FAD, or NAD plus and FAD as electron carriers. Here we have NADP as an electron carrier, and once the electrons that originated in that water go through the electron transport chain, generating a proton gradient, the electrons end up in NADPH. That electron gradient is used here to make ATP the same way through oxidative phosphorylation. Basically, photosynthesis is the exact opposite. These electrons and the electrons in NADPH and the ATP generated by light reactions are used in the Calvin cycle to combine 6 carbon dioxides into a glucose through the Calvin cycle. This is kind of analogous to the Krebs cycle. This happens in the stroma of the plant, so like that, almost like the cytoplasm of the plant, like their matrix, of the chloroplast. Okay, just like in the mitochondria, the